Welcome back to the classroom for week 3 of Gift Boxes R&R, Repurpose and Recycle. This week's project is going to be done on this cookie tin. I got this particular cookie tin at the Dollar Tree store, and I believe that it is a regular item that they carry, and I was told by the clerk that you can actually order these online. The ones that you get in the store are usually a bigger circumference, but I like this size. What I did with this to prepare it is you can lightly sand it and then you wash it with rubbing alcohol or vinegar and water, whatever you have available. And then I picked up some automotive paint or Rust-Oleum primer, and I primed it. And so sometimes it doesn't cover all the lettering. I mean, if you look real close, I might not have gotten all the lettering covered, but I think it will be fine. So it's sandable primer. Now, what I noticed on the cans, the ones I had gotten last year or the year before, that wasn't raised and it didn't have this lip. This one now has a lip and it's raised. So what we'll have to do is take our modeling paste, like what we did with the Twinings tea box, and take the modeling paste and cover that over so that it doesn't show up. I'm going to do that, cover it over like frosting a cake, and I'm going to let it set so that it's completely dry, and then I'll be back. After this modeling paste or stucco, whichever you choose to use, dries, what you want to do is take a sanding disc and you want to scrub over that gently to smooth it out. I want to get it as smooth as possible so that when we put this design on there, it's not lumpy bumpy. But base coat the lid with light buttermilk. I'm going to use a 3/4 inch wash brush. Now for the can, we need to decide how far up we're going to go with our napkin. Our napkin I'm using is a cocktail size napkin, and what I did was I went about 2/3 the length of the napkin. So figure what that is on your piece. I tried not to cut it in half. I went a little bit above half on this can. And I also had a little bit extra here that helped break up the fact that if I was at halfway point, it doesn't look halfway, because I have a larger margin of design here, shorter in the shortest. Okay? So how do we do that? If you have a compass with a chalk pencil, you can figure out from which end, if you put the point on the outside over the edge, not on the edge, and then you put your pencil at the line where you want the break to be. So this is a tightener, so you're going to tighten, moving this lever will tighten it so it doesn't move on you easily, and you have it at the right distance. So you come over to your piece here. Again, put the metal edge flat to your to the bottom. And you get a line around that area. You want a line around the top area. Again, you're going to figure out, adjust your pencil. and then go over here. Okay, that's the trick to getting that done. We're going to keep this bottom part white because we're going to decoupage the napkin over it. But we're going to paint this section with coral blush, and we're going to paint the top section with lamp black. I'm going to use a 3/4 inch wash brush. I'm going to start it on the video, but I will stop it after a few strokes, and then I will come back when I'm completed. See you soon. Okay, now for our lid. In order to do this kind of doily design on here, I started with the light buttermilk base, and I placed a piece of lace on top that had a design. And this is just regular lace, but after using it with paint, it's gotten stiff. If you don't have a piece of lace but you have this tooling, you can use that, put that over your design, or you can even go to a paper doily or a crochet doily and put that on. So there's many different options for you to do. So I'm going to place this on here. I think I'm going to take and use the X as the center of my design. I'm going to pull all of this together underneath here. We're going to use a deerfoot brush, and we're going to pounce on the black. So load your brush up and then put this down on the surface. And gently, don't have too much paint on your brush. You don't want it to bleed out through the bottom underneath. So always start, when you reload, always start with soft pressure and then work your way up to more pressure as you see how much paint's coming off of your brush. Not too worried about getting around the edges because we're going to cover those up. But you really want to get the design in the center. So take the lace off, and then you have your design. With a paper punch, I have a 2-inch scalloped edge paper punch. And I picked it up at Michael's. And you're going to punch out like an old cereal box or pasta box. And what we do is we place it on the center of our piece. You can either trace with a pencil around that, or what you can do is take your brush, and it can be the same stipple brush you just used, with some lamp black. And you're going to stipple away from the design, away from the edge. When you're done that, take your palette knife and lift it off, and you should have a nice little doily to set your rose on. Now I'm going to paint around the edges with the black paint. Be right back. To do the damask look on the top, which mirror imaged or kept going with the theme of my napkin, I bought a stencil from Prima. I got it at Hobby Lobby. So very carefully I'm going to place this, and I'm going to on here, but with the thicker edge at the bottom, so that this edge lines up with my white, so I don't get any of this color over onto the white area. We're going to be putting black on here, and if the black gets on the black, no loss, but you don't want it on the white because you don't want to have to wash it off. So again, I'm pulling it tight down. I'm going to take my Deerfoot brush and load it, but pounce off most of the paint, and I'm going to gently pounce on this color. The stencil is rounded, so you need to be very careful as to keeping straight onto it. It's going to be a little fuzzy. I suppose if I use the tack on adhesive, I could maybe tack it on to my piece. But it's not going to be perfect, and it's not supposed to be perfect. Nothing in the world is perfect. So as I come around, make sure you keep it tight. Go straight on. Oops, see, I moved it. You don't want to do that. So now I have to pull it away and see how it comes out. Now I have this back area here, so you're going to have to line that up very carefully. So line that edge up here, wrap it around there. It's a lot easier if you have some resistance behind you, like I'm using the table. And only go to that edge where you started. You don't want to go over that. If you got black over on your white piece, take a Q-tip or something and wipe it off. But that's how we get that there. Go wash off your stencil, and I'll be right back. To create this lace on the top, I use the other edge of my piece of lace. And I turned over my can, and if you want to start in the center of the opposite side, had the scallops a little bit higher than the actual black line. Now at this point, if you want to tape over that, you can. I'm going to mix the coral blush with the light buttermilk to create a lighter value blush color. And I'm doing this with a palette knife. You can either use the same Deerfoot brush, or I would size down to a smaller one. And I'm going to pick up some of this color, and I'm going to start tapping and get over the edge of the lace, but try not to get on the coral blush. Again, we're not trying to be perfect here. If you got over the line, is it the end of the world? No. Okay, so there it is. Again, we're not perfect. We're not looking for perfection here. The bottom part is going to be decoupaged on. So you need to, first off, take your napkin, and if you don't recall from previous videos, we take the plies apart. So make sure you get both of them because this is only one ply. There's another one here that you need to get apart. So it has to come out to be this thin. See the difference between that and that one? This is still too white. That's how you know you don't have all the plies apart, okay? You look at your napkin and you decide what parts you want. Now if you want it straight on, that's easy enough to do. You cut the edge and you straight on. If you want to do bits and pieces, you can tear it up and add bits and pieces, because this will not go all the way around, you know, and then it will repeat. So you can do that. I will cut my napkin in half, find the back seam and go set my design halfway and say, is that what I want? Or would I rather move it up and have the rose be our focal point? So if you want your rose to be your focal point, you have to mark off that at this point you're going to cut that napkin off. If it's over here, it's okay, we can get rid of that later. But this you have to have exact. So knowing that that's where I want to cut it off, take your ruler and I would square it to the edge. Draw with your pencil. Take your scissors and cut that line. Again, if it's not perfect, no worries. I'm going to take my decoupage for napkins and an old scruffy brush, and I'm going to start applying this decoupage on my piece. You don't want to get it on the coral blush area. Anywhere below it is fine, but you don't want it on the coral blush area. Find the center of your piece and place that design down. Rub it down one way and then go the other. Now as you turn it around, you see how it is not really lining up. So I'm going to just tear it off, and it's okay. And you're going to put this down. Then I'm going to pick it back up and place it back on the line, maybe even a little bit over the line. You have your scissors ready. You can always trim off, and then I'm going to go back up. Figure out how much you need. And then you can trim that off at this side. You can always just tear it as well. You don't need to use the scissors. Take some more decoupage and go over that paper, over the napkin. Make sure you definitely go where you trimmed it. And if there's a little bit of any of that white showing through and you want to cover it with some color, take a piece of napkin that matches that color and place it right over that. It's okay now to get the decoupage onto the coral blush because you're not putting any more napkin on there. Okay, now you're going to let that dry. I had a die cut that I cut these leaves out of, and they have a little bit of embossing in them where the veins and off veins are. But if you don't have one, I provided a pattern for you for these leaves, and I take them and cut them out on out of a paper plate. This is out of a manila folder, so if you have a manila folder hanging out, go for it. Either one will work. Then I took the lid of texture paste, or this is gesso, but any of those deco art textures that come in this jar. It's roughly a 2 7/8 inch circle. And I placed that down on my surface and I traced around the lid. And in your pattern, you'll see I'm giving you this spiral and the 2 leaves, so you won't need a die cut. What I do now is I'm going to cut out, and I'll be right back. Now that we have these cut out, what we're going to do is we're going to base coat this with the coral blush, and we're going to base coat these with a Hauser medium green. It's easier to base coat my paper pieces when I place them on a paper towel. It causes friction and makes it less easy for them to slide around my tabletop. Make sure you base coat both sides, because if you're going to have it be raised, you're going to see the bottom side and the top side. I'm going to shade and highlight the leaf. I'm going to use a shade of Plantation Pine, and I'm going to highlight with French Vanilla. Take your 3/4 inch wash brush and do a side load, and at the base of the base is the one that's fat, more, is fatter. I'm going to wash some of this color up. It might take more than one application. Depends on how much water is in your brush. So dry that and probably come back with a second application. Take your stylus and decide where your vein line is going to be and draw it on with the stylus so it's like what you consider embossing. So start at the base, curve up, and draw it towards the outside point. Same with this one, curve up, and then start rounding it back down to the point. Now you know where your vein line is going to be. Let's see if I can show you. See how I got that curved? So that's where your vein line's going to be. Load your flat brush, your wash brush, with some Plantation Pine. This time a more narrow float, or side load I should say. And we're going to run that right on top on the short side of the stem. With your 10-aught Dresden and some water, pick up some soupy Plantation Pine and draw some vein lines on. Dry that. Now the vein lines aren't showing up because the Plantation Pine on top of Plantation Pine doesn't show. So what you can do is mix some of the Plantation Pine with some black, make it more like a midnight color, And then when you do the vein line, only do it on where the plantation pine is not showing up. Make sure your leaves are dry, and then let's highlight. The highlight is going to be French vanilla. Same brush, the 3/4 inch, again with the narrow side load of this color. And I'm going to go up the outer edge and then the vein. So the outer side and the vein. If you've washed off your vein lines, go back with that color and you can put it back in. Black is a strong color. It can take over very easily, so be careful. These are not realistic leaves or flowers. Put those aside to dry. Let's go back to this here. We have that spiral design that we had put on it, and you're going to, I don't have mine on, so what I do is I just make my own. So if you don't want to trace it on, you just make your own. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut along those lines. And you have a spring. Now what you're going to do is start by warming the paper up to be rolled. And I'm just rubbing the paper between my two fingers, and it's kind of warming up the paper to roll. And then I'm going to start rolling the paper. Now if you have a quilling tool, you want to use the end of your paintbrush. You can get it started rolling that way. And you're going to keep the inside edge tight, and this side's going to splay, because that's how you make a rose. What you're left with is this loop here, and this loop is actually the base that you're going to glue this on. So you wrap it around like so, and then what you end up with is that base to glue it on. So now you're going to kind of loosen it up a little bit so you can see the different layers of petals, and then we kind of push on it. I'm going to put it upside down and press on it. You can kind of start bending the petals back, meaning this way. If you pinch it between your finger and your thumb like this, you can kind of pull them away, bend them backwards. The next thing I would do is take your flat brush and a very thin layer of the French vanilla, wipe it off on a paper towel, and just hit the tops. And gives it a little bit of a highlight. Let that dry, and then we'll glue it to its base. While the glue gun's heating up, go back to your can and the decoupage now that it's dry, and you can start tearing it off. After you've torn it off, then you can take a nail file and it works it right off. On your leaves, take the stylus again, score those lines. You can even score some vein lines if you want. And then you start to bend them. And then you can create little rolls. So then they start going like that. Make it dimensional. Do the same with this one. And the other thing I'm going to do is get a piece of rickrack to go around here. So I'm going to do a piece of an off-white rickrack and place it on there, and that breaks up the dividing line, and if I have any white space, I'm going to cover it up with this. I mean, go ahead and try different things. I just think that's too much lace on here. When I have lace up there, the pom-poms really wouldn't look good. That might look good, but I don't like it. I don't like it personally, so I'm going to go with the rickrack. So first off, let's take some glue, and you're going to stick it on the base of the rose here. And you're going to push the rose down into it and hold it. Be careful, you don't want to get that glue on your hands. You will burn yourself. Next, I'm going to take a little bit of the glue and put it on the end where my and just tack that down there. And then I'm going to continue on with dots every so often, or even a fine line of this glue. But you can't go too far before you have to press down the rickrack. It will dry real quick. I like using the glue gun because it is quick drying and little mess. But if you're not used to a glue gun, you could burn yourself. So you got to be real careful. So we're at the end. So what I'll do is take my scissors and trim. Take your lid and your two leaves. Figure out where you're putting your rose, and then that will determine where your leaves go. If these are too big, you can cut them down. If you want them smaller, just take your scissors, cut off some of the some of the shading. So put one leaf there, put the other leaf there, and then I'm going to put a big dot for the rose and stick the rose right there. Hold it while it dries. Now I think that it needs something in the center because it looks a little naked. So I have a bag of some pink gems, but I also have a bag of pearls, but I'm thinking the pearls are too white. They really don't go with my decor. So you really got to think about what you're working on as to what you're incorporating in your piece. You need to have it all harmonized, otherwise I put a white pearl in there, the white pearl is going to stick out like a sore thumb. It doesn't look like it belongs at the party. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to add this little gem here. It gives me enough bling, but it doesn't fight or compete with the other elements of my piece. So just let that set inside. You can push it down a little bit if you want, but it gives it some bling, but it's not fighting with the rose. The rose is still the center of interest. That's what I did with this one. This one here, the reason the rose looks different is because I used a die cut. You really don't need the die cut. If you'd like, you can go ahead and spray varnish this. I probably would have varnished it before I put this on, but now since I have the rickrack on, I might go with a brush varnish to seal it. But there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this project. I just love this one. This is one of my favorites. I hope that it inspired you to create your own projects using your own napkins. And until next time, keep calm and paint on.